You are listening to the sounds of the Right On Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 44 of On the Record Jams, brought to you by the Right On Network. I'm AJ.
I'm Arthur.
And on this episode of On the Record Jams, what are we bringing to the record this time, Arthur?
Well, I'm going to break yet another rule. We've been talking for quite a while with our 44th episode here. We've been trying to do one song, but I'm going to get greedy and I'm going to do two songs. But there's a reason that we'll get into over the course of the episode. But if you want me to pretend that I'm following a rule that I'm telling you that I'm not, this episode is about the Isley brothers, and here we go again. From their 1980 album, Go All the Way. Their 18th album.
Good Lord. 18th album, 1980. Before we go any further, I do want to thank our Patreon subscribers because they're helping us go past our 19th episode, and that's Alan Wright, he's Bold Outlaw, Delvin Sims, DJ Merc Bandwidth. Guys, I'm listening to his new album over and over again. You got to check it out. Go by Boycott Sounds. That's by DJ Merc. We have Tim Price, the Podcrasher himself, Cluck Trent, Kim Fedorkowski, Mark Blair, Paul Hicks, Laurel Phillips, the Irredeemable Shag at the Fire and Water Podcast Network. We have Justin Steiner, Rick from Rick and Jeff Present Unpacking the Power Pack. Chris Pine 1, listen to him on this here feed, talking about 30 Minutes to Get Back, a Beatles podcast. Bill Beer of the Bat Pod, April 5K, Jordan Holt, the great Jordan Holt, Clinton Robinson of Fan Film Fridays, Coffee and Comics, and Jeremy Dahl. Thank you, all of you, for going to patreon.com/rightonnetwork. And just for as little as $1 a month, you can be a Patreon subscriber too and watch me do some unboxings and some other extra, some value added material on there. Now, wow, 1980, I think, as far as Here We Go Again, and like the Isley brothers in general, I was always thinking like, oh yeah, the 70s, but wow, what a way to go into the next decade. And you know how it is where even when you're in the new decade, something really has to happen to define it. And you might be 3 years in, and then it's like, okay, now it's the 90s. But just because you go into a new decade, it's still remnants of that prior one. Dude, I think because the production of these Isley Brothers songs, I was going through them on the playlist, production's through the roof, the engineering is through the roof because the clarity of the instrumentation and the singing, they're always top notch.
Yes, 100%. They were top notch. I think you got to go back a little bit when you talk about the Isley brothers in general. It's like you got to have it in your head of where these guys started at. This group started in 1954, and they had a fourth brother that passed away, Vernon, and they were more a gospel group at that time. And so the Isley brothers, there are a lot of different things. If you're going to be functional for that long as a group, you know you got to go through a lot of amalgamations. You got to have a lot of ideas, a lot of different eras. They spent some time on Motown in the 60s. Like the Isley brothers have been everywhere. You think even 30 years ago, they showed up with Robert Kelly and even had some stuff well after that time. And they've made albums in the last few years. And even now, recently you get online and their lead singer, Ron Isley, man, like he's had some health issues, but he's still doing shows. And I think I told you this last year or so, like, man, I was starting to get concerned about Ron because it was like every time I saw him on these little social media videos and stuff, he'd be sitting down. And it's like, man, I know he's an older guy, but it's like, man, I want to see this guy standing up. It's not like I want to see him run a 5K or anything, but it's like, man, I hope he's doing all right. Because this is these are one of my favorite voices in music overall, partially because it's just he lasted for so long as a killer vocalist, but he's got this really smooth and odd tone that if you've heard him sing live in the 70s, it's really a crazy vocal that he offers his group on a lot of different songs, a lot of different albums. So I just love Ron Isley. I've loved the Isleys for a really long time. And it took me a while up into my adulthood. Like I had these tapes. My parents had some Isley Brothers tapes. And, you know, they have songs, so many hit songs from the 70s and 80s where it was just kind of in the walls. And if you were around people or adults that were listening to R&B, like Isley Brothers would come around at some point. But when I got into my musical exploration phase and really started listening back to albums in the early 2000s, I came back around to really appreciate the volume and the depth of what they did and how many different sounds they had, right? Like, so they were a mid-tempo Unk barbecue outfit. They were an arena rock outfit. They were a soft rock outfit. They would do a occasional rebellion song. I think I've talked about this before when we talked about Who's That Lady. A lot of times what the Isley were doing in the 60s and early 70s is they were doing cover songs, which was not abnormal at the time. But sometimes they would do that as a form of protest, or in some cases just to show love to an artist they really liked. But they really wanted to rework those songs, lengthen them out, stretch them out, maybe get a little indulgent about it, right? Take a 3-minute song and turn it into a 7-minute song where all their instrumentation people could get their stuff in, Ron could get his vocal stuff in, and just to see them grow and build. And where I wanted to come in on this Here We Go Again piece is like, okay, this is 1980, and where does this find the Isley Brothers? They started in 54. You Know You Make Me Want to Shout was 59. It's Your Thing, Do What You Want to Do was 69. Who's That Lady the second time was 73. And it's like, how are these dudes still here, right? Like, it's 1980. They have an album, because almost every year they had an album. And this one was called Go All the Way. And it's like, you think about the type of group they became in the 70s. It was almost like they were an odd arena rock group that could do other stuff. And most of the stuff we knew growing up, AJ, was kind of like their soft stuff, their Quiet Storm stuff.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like what you remember from the Isley Brothers as a kid?
Yes, and then there's one other thing. So I can't remember if it's the Blues Brothers or Animal House. Makes Me Want to Shout. That made it lift up, because the reason why I'm bringing this up, let's say the Isley Brothers stopped being a band in 1975. We would have heard about them and they would have been referenced and put in movies as we were growing up as teenagers in the 90s. But they kept going. So once they reached 1970, they're already, hey, we're jet set and we're legends. And now we're about to go into the 80s with adding to our legend. This is remarkable. But yes, like you're saying, yes, I did know them like as, hey, we're doing smooth kind of music.
Right. So they had the smooth stuff. They had the rebellion stuff. I really want to lean in on that arena rock stuff, because it's like there was a lot of Ernie Isley guitar solos all across these songs.
Yes.
And some of these, man, he's going in on it. Like Who's That Lady is a more obvious one, because they basically gave him 2 minutes to just go off. And he just lost it. And it's like, okay, like he's getting it. Summer Breeze, same thing. He's just getting it. And it's like he's got his jams, but also you think about them as their 70s run in the Isley Brothers that people, to me, when people talk about Isley Brothers, they're really talking about that 3+3 Isley group. Mm-hmm. When it was the 3 older brothers, so you got O'Kelly, Rudolph, and the lead singer Ron as the older brothers. That was the group through the 50s and the 60s. And then as the 70s come, they started adding their 2 younger brothers, Marvin and Ernie. Marvin being a bass guitar player, Ernie being a guitar player in general with all those great shreds that he's got and all the electric guitar and the grooves. But then you also have their brother-in-law, Chris Jasper, who's doing a lot of the writing, a lot of the melody creation, and a lot of the keys. And when you listen to the Isley Brothers, there's a lot of all of that going on. So it was almost like, kind of like the Younger Brothers and Chris Jasper became this engine that allowed the Isley Brothers to be this self-contained machine. And they, like you said, they had the ability and the resources by that time and the understanding of the industry to say, we got to be ahead of the game as best we can with engineering and how things sound. And we got to make sure Chris's keys come out. We got to make sure both of these guitars come through here the way we want it to. Ernie was doing a lot of the drumming as well. And then you got to make room for Ron, who they viewed as like, this is our ace in the hole. Like, if all this other stuff doesn't work, we got, if nothing else, we got Ron Isley. And they viewed that like, we got to make sure we make this bed for Ron to lay in. That's not a pun to set me up to say something about between the sheets, but it works. But like, man, like, this is what they were doing. And man, they hit like 3+3 was their album to declare they were this new unit. And that album has that lady on it. And it also has a couple cover records on it that are amazing. But from 73 to 79, they just go on this crazy run of just everything they touch is gold and platinum, is hits all over the place. A lot of these barbecue records that you're going to hear from them are made in this 6-year period. And then, like you say, you get to the 80s where you think about the landscape these guys are in. These guys are here, and you already got like the OJs, you got Earth, Wind, and Fire. You got Stevie Wonder is still coming out of his crazy run. Marvin Gaye is kind of going through some stuff. Rick James is coming up. And the Isley Brothers are looking at this. And there's this guy from Minneapolis. And he's making some stuff that people kind of like, but he hadn't kind of blown up yet. Yes, I'm talking about Prince. And the Minneapolis sound hadn't come yet. And you got this dude that, you know, him and his brothers had a group, but they were kind of like kids, right? And then as teenagers, you know, they weren't making as many hits, but they were still kind of lurking around. But, you know, people were talking about his brother was, you know, the lead singer, the younger brother, that he was going to go out on his own and make his own thing now that he was about to be an adult. But who knows how that's going to go at 1980. I'm talking about Michael Jackson. And the Isley Brothers are in the middle of all that, trying to deal with their own internal thing of the great news is that they're self-contained. And they're their own thing, and they can mostly put together music by themselves with the studio people involved. The bad news is that they're self-contained. And so they're arguing with themselves about what their sound is going to be. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. No, wait a minute, guys. The 80s are coming. What are we going to do? So, well, Go All the Way is like this kind of, this is after they've made the double CD as well, right? So their double album was 1979. It's called Winner Takes All, where they just kind of do everything. And they got the disco songs, they got their arena rock, they got the killer ballads, they got their mid-tempo 6 o'clock at night grooves. Like, they got all of that on that Winner Takes All album. But, you know, I've talked to you about this before. A lot of times these R&B groups, when they made their double album, it was kind of like, well, we've kind of done everything we can do now. What do we do next? And this is where you find these guys with Go All the Way in 1980. But you also got these other bands coming up. And this is where I'm going to enter into talking about the other song that I want to talk about here. Is you got this group that started with another set of brothers, the Wilson Brothers. And they didn't call themselves that. They called themselves the Gap Band. And they started in the early to mid 70s, and they're starting to make their albums. Well, they made 2 albums, and then they started numbering their albums. They just got lazy for whatever reason and said, we're just going to start calling our albums by our group. So it's going to be Gap Band 1, Gap Band 2, Gap Band 3, all the way up to Gap Band 8 or something like that. But Gap Band 3 is actually their 5th album. And on that album, it is a lot of hits on that album. It has Burn Rubber, Why You Want to Hurt Me Girl. It's got Humping on there, but it's also got Yearning for Your Love. And so this is where I'm going to come in at and say, okay, as a kid, I know I heard Yearning for Your Love a million times. Maybe not a million, maybe half. I heard that song everywhere I went all the time. Every time there started to be slow songs getting played from 1980 to a long time after that, I was going to hear Yearning for Your Love. And I heard a bunch. I knew it, and it was a thing. And as a kid, I wasn't asking any questions. I wasn't controlling the radio. There was no aux like the kids talk about now. There was no aux to pass over to me. So I was under control of whatever these people were playing. But as I got into my 20s and started doing music exploration, I started listening to these Isley Brother albums. And I got guided. I bring up Big John quite a bit as one of my musical tour guides. And he was a big Isley Brothers person. But he was also a very big early 80s R&B guy. So he starts talking to me about this 1980 Isley album. Like, have you heard Go All the Way? Well, at the time he's talking to me, Go All the Way is out of print. Like, you can't just walk in the store and buy Go All the Way on CD. Like, you had to get it online through the internet, or you just had to have somebody that had the album. And by that time, my parents weren't buying as many albums, so they didn't have this album. So I didn't have Go All the Way. And that's where Here We Go Again is. So I've asked a couple people online from time to time, but for me, Here We Go Again and Yearning for Your Love are like sister songs. Like, they are joined at the hip. The aesthetic of the record, the composition of the record, the pace of the record, the messaging behind the record. Like, to me, these sound like 2P and the Pod records. Do you agree with me on this?
I agree with you. Playing them back to back is very interesting experience. And then when I'm playing one and I try to think of the other one, a little difficult to do, and then I play the other one. So they're just blending into each other. But now I'm having a hard time of trying to think of them at the same time.
Right. So I unfortunately have brought this struggle to you because I've had this struggle ever since I heard Here We Go Again. I was like, I love this record, but something is up with this. Something is up with this. And man, what's going on? And I had to go look. And obviously, as a kid, you think the thing you heard first is the thing that's the thing. But I was like, that just doesn't seem right, because the Isley Brothers were a thing way longer than the Gap Band was. Like, would the Isley Brothers feel like they needed to swipe something from the Gap Band? And I had to go look, and I was like, okay, but just because these dates don't mean anything, right? But the Isley Brother Go All the Way, that came out in April of 1980. And the Gap Band album, which is their fifth album, called Gap Band 3, because they're jerks, it was December in 1980. And I was like, well, wait a minute. That means Here We Go Again came first. But I'm thinking, okay, that almost makes more sense, because the Isley Brothers were on their 18th album. Like I said, they had come off this bonkers run. Now, I feel like, as a side note, and I never do tangents and side notes, but here's one. It's like, I want to name the Isley Brother albums just to kind of give you a conversation about the type of group these guys were by the time they hit this 3+3 era. They had 3+3, Live It Up, The Heat Is On, Harvest for the World, Go for Your Guns, Showdown, Winner Takes All, Go All the Way. Those are some weird album names considering what's on those albums, right? Like, it's arena rock, but it's also like mid-tempo barbecue R&B plus some of the best ballads you ever heard in your life. And like, that's what they do. And every now and then there's like a change-up pitch on one or two songs per album. And these albums were in consecutive years, and they were obviously on a run. So by the time they get to go all the way, it kind of makes sense that other groups coming along would want to have a little Isley mixed in to what they were doing. So it completely makes sense to me, but I would love it if somebody could clear this up. I mean, it's really unfortunate now at this point because the Isley brothers are down to, of the 3+3 group, only Ron Isley and Ernie Isley are still with us because Chris Jasper passed last year. So it's like, man, we're starting to get to the point where you can't even ask. And even with the Gap Band, their lead singer, Charlie Wilson, has been sick off and on too. So it's like, man, I know it would feel like a waste of time to ask them, but man, I would love to get somewhere around these guys and ask them, like, what's up with these songs? What's up with your relationship with these guys as groups? Because I think the challenge now, when you look back, we're sitting here very comfortably nerding out over 45-year-old songs, right? That's what we're talking about, right? And we do stuff like that all the time on this show. But, like, man, what was going on that led to these two records sounding so much alike? Did they do it on purpose? Did they know? Was there friction? Was it just kind of a case of bands trying to outband each other? Like, you hear somebody make a record, you're in competition, and you say, okay, you got Here We Go Again. We got you on that. We got Yearning for Your Love. We think we got the killer vocalist. You like Ron Isley? We'll take our bets with Charlie Wilson, and we're gonna make an Isley record better than any record that the Isleys can make right now in 1980. I don't know if they would cop to that, but that's the story that I've told myself, right? And that gives these songs extra content for me. Not that they need it, because they're jams all on their own, right?
They're both songs where they're ethereal and it sounds like you're ascending to heaven. And they're taking their time about it.
Yes, so some of that 70s indulgence is there, because you're talking 5+ minute songs for both. And, I talk about that a lot of times as a plus. But I can also be, fair enough to know that some of these songs is like, yeah, they're doing 2 and 3 minute vamp outs. They're doing 2 and 3 minute refrains. And we talked about this before we hit record. And it's like, okay, for Yearning for Your Love, the line that runs that song is, you can't keep running in and out of my life. Like, this is the point. Like, I'm yearning for your love. You're being indecisive. Like, come on, my heart is yearning for your love. Like, you got to come on, because I'm ready. Also known as the Girl Quit Tripping song that I call a subgenre of R&B music. So these are two of the heavyweight champions over the years of Girl Quit Tripping songs. And yeah, Here We Go Again is a lot of the same thing. It's Here We Go Again, I thought what we had is over. And it's like, ooh, I found out what we have isn't over. Like, I'm wanting to come back to you again. And it's like, yeah, the Isley Brothers have told this story before in other songs, Voyage to Atlantis, things like that. So it's not like the topic or the subject matter is some newly charted lands, but it's almost like this familiar place that people are trying to stay in as you go into the 80s. Because like you talk about all the time, when these era changes happen, and also like, you got to give these groups an opportunity to do their weird stuff so that when they settle in, they can settle in and give you a Here We Go Again. They can settle in and give you a Yearning for Your Love. Or even like these hit anthems, Burn Rubber on Me and that type of stuff. And you got to allow a certain amount of experimentation. And yeah, I would say Gap Band, even though it was their 5th album, Gap Band 3, well, hey, they got Burn Rubber on Me, Humping, and Yearning for Your Love. Those are 3 huge hits during that period of time. But then you look at the rest of the songs on the album and listen to them, you're like, oh, okay, these are not hits. These don't sound like hits. These don't sound like the other 3 songs, because there's a certain amount of experimentation and throwing stuff at the wall that they're doing, because they're trying to get to where the Isley Brothers are. And the Isley Brothers are more trying to stay where they are, but they've been big for so long. They became this whole new thing in the 70s. And so it's really fascinating to have them make a song, Here We Go Again, which was a moderate hit, and then have the Gap Band show up and basically step right on their song with Yearning for Your Love. And like I said, my memories tells me that I very much remember Yearning for Your Love. I don't remember Here We Go Again. And I think people that aren't chapter and verse on Isley Brothers, they probably have never heard that song.
Man, I'm sitting here just steady trying to go back and forth and play those songs in my head, and I have to like exert energy to do it. Now, another thing you got to keep in mind too, think about when they are producing these albums and sending them out. We're saying Here We Go Again being dropped in 1980. People are still buying records, and they're using this record for two things. Like I'm throwing a house party, dinner party, or for romantic reasons. So yeah, we're setting the tone or the mood with this song. We're not going to just get out of this in 2 minutes, 45 seconds or 3 minutes, 30 seconds. So if this goes a little longer, that's fine. And we might have 9 or 10 songs on this album, because if it's on wax, you have a finite amount of space. And we're releasing stuff almost yearly. So if it's like, oh, we didn't get enough, we're going to come back out next year. So that's the context we're dealing with as well.
That's really vital too, because it's like, hey, you're going to get two sides, right? And it would be so funny. Again, this is another Big John thing that he would tell me is like, man, these R&B groups, when they would really start feeling themselves, they would do this thing where all the up-tempo records would be on one side and all the slow records would be on the other side. And it was just a matter of which side they gave you first. It was just kind of more strategic to do the fast side first and the slow side second. And he literally called it, the first side was for dancing, the second side was for romancing. And I was like, I don't know if Big John stole that from somebody else. I don't know if that was just his own special thing, but I co-opted it and I loved it and it stayed with me forever. It's with me now. And it's like, man, okay, how much dancing and romancing are you trying to do? Because like you said, literally you're talking about the physical element. It's very difficult now to explain to people that you open up an app and say, play Drake or whatever, and then it just cracks open and starts playing Drake songs. Like that level of control that we have now, like the music doesn't ever have to stop. But man, you think about Go All the Way, that album's like 35, 40 minutes long. And it's two sides. So you play the first 3 songs, now you got to flip that record over. And at the beginning of the second side, you come right into Here We Go Again. And then the second song is Don't Say Goodnight, It's Time for Love, which is the huge hit from this album, which probably had the Isley Brothers thinking, hey, we could do no wrong. We got this. Everything's still going the way we want it to go. Like nothing can stop us here because we're money. But like, it's just very interesting thinking about record construction, how you decide, and also how you're going to try to stay with the times. Are you going to make a super duper disco dance record that people can play versus a house party versus playing it in a club, which are two different things, right? Like you need a certain RPMs, you need a certain mood, and then are you just going to make a full jump off a bridge disco album? And like these are the decisions that these type of groups had to make. And then if you're going to do ballads when everybody's trying to dance, like, man, do you just give up a whole side and make a full ballad side? Or do you say, hey, we can do this too and just make the one ballad and just get it completely right? And kind of that's what Gap Band's approach seemed to be more in the direction of, we're not going to give you a bunch of ballads, but when we give you one, like we're really going to hit it. And so that's what Yearning for Your Love was for them. It's like, hey, we're going to give you the Ernie Isley tribute guitars. We're going to give you a 2-minute vamp out. And we're not going to give you a bunch of lyrics. We're just going to get the point across and we're going to kill it. And we're not giving up a whole side. You don't get a whole side for romancing. You get one song for romancing. That's all you get. So it's very interesting and this is before everybody had multiple videos too, right? So I don't know there to be videos. Somebody could let us know, but I don't know there to be videos for any of these songs.
I was going to ask that because, a lot of their covers are pretty elaborate. Did they do videos?
And like for Isley Brothers, I'm not thinking so, because my guess, and again, this is something I wish, somebody would get in long form and ask Ernie and Ron, like, hey man, what were y'all doing, in the late 70s and early 80s? Because you guys are putting out albums every year, like from 1969 to 83. They put out an album every year, at least one. And so it's like, hey, man, if you're doing that, you got to imagine that's expensive. And you're going and doing the shows on the in-between time. And you're just doing shows, getting back in the studio, putting out another album, and just keeping that cycle going forever. And you're doing this with your brothers and your brother-in-law, like for, 10 years, basically. Like it's a wonder they were able to put together as much good stuff as they did before they started having enough issues that they had to stop. And really, they were making hits up until about 81. So this was kind of like their last. They had one album after this called Grand Slam. So again, weird album names. And Grand Slam had hits on it, but Grand Slam was also one of those albums that felt like the Isley were kind of lost in space. Like they kind of didn't know what to do. Like that's an album where you're not chapter and verse really on Isley Brothers, but like I'm just going to say the name of the songs and you let me know if you know any of them. I'll say all 7, then you let me know if you know any of these Isley Brothers songs. This is Grand Slam, 1981. So right after Go All the Way, they have a song called Tonight is the Night, If I Had You. Then it's I Once Had Your Love and I Can't Let Go. They're doing the Barry White long song name by now too, by the way. You can see it. And then Hurry Up and Wait. Young Girls. Hey, don't put that on me. That's what they call the song. Party Night. Don't Let Up. And then the closer is Who Said. Do you know, like just by hearing those names, do you know any of those Isley Brothers songs?
So the thing is, not by title. I would have to listen to it and go like, oh yeah, I know that song, but I don't know the title. But yeah, just by title alone, no.
I'm going to go ahead and let you off the hook. You're not going to know any of those songs, even if you play the whole thing.
Okay, so Go All the Way.
Like, so it didn't go all the way. Grand Slam did not get on base with, I don't know how much further we can drag this out. Yeah. But they did not get on base with Grand Slam. Like it sold a bunch of records. Like it went gold eventually. But for them, that was kind of like ooh, man, all right, we just went gold. Like that's how huge they were. Like they were expecting to hit every time. And so after that, they went a little bit more dancey and they made a little bit more of a longer album. And their 20th album is called Inside You, which is ridiculous. And it's 1981. Now, Inside You, the title track is an up-tempo dance song. Ha ha, I bet you wouldn't have guessed that. And that album, I don't think it has any hits on it. I think basically the title track was a dance track, so people rolled with it. But again, that was them kind of being in the mix of trying to be modern, but also keep on doing their own thing. They also had outside writers. They also had strings, which again is an Earth, Wind, and Fire thing. They started looking over their shoulders around this time. They started thinking like, man, all these other groups are doing all this stuff. We've been doing our same thing. And they probably were having this internal argument of like, what do we do to not get left in the mix. We got Gap Band over here talking about some Yearning for Your Love, and it sounds just like what we would make. These people are starting to kind of catch up with what we're doing. So we've talked about that on a multitude of episodes, right? Where these artists start thinking like me, and people are catching on to our game. How do we stay out in front? How do we stay in an environment where we're the lead dogs? And a lot of times the answer that people come up with is they say, well, we got to pivot before they pivot. We got to leave our style alone and come up with, like, we era jumped. Like, they used the younger brothers in the 70s to get an idea of what was rolling, and the younger brothers helped them hit. But then now the younger brothers are now 10 years older going into the 80s. And they're like, well, wait, who do we get to help us now? Because we've all been together the last 7 to 10 years doing shows, putting out albums every year. We got people stepping on our sound. What do we do? Well, when they come out in 1982, AJ, with The Real Deal, if you were to listen to this album, it's like a bunch of dance music on there. And it sounds absurdly Princey. Like, obviously Princey. And it's like, wait a minute, buddy. Like, now y'all are Prince? Like, what are y'all doing? And it's like, hey, that's kind of weird, because it's
more like the time. They probably sound like the time.
So, like, they're trying to be funky. They're still trying to keep the Ernie guitar in there. But they're not committing aside to the romancing anymore. Like, so it's like they're trying to do the crazy one ballad. Now, this album has All in My Lover's Eyes on it. Now, that's one of them songs that, depending on which Isley Brother greatest hits or whatever you stumble into, that song is a hit. And that's the type of song that people play like a post-hype song. Like, it may not have been a huge hit at the time, but it's perfectly Isley, because you got the Ernie guitar solo at the beginning. You got Ron just killing, and it's got everything that a great Isley ballad has. So it's one of those songs that grew on people later. But they were trying to be funky. They were trying to be Princey. They were trying to let Chris Jasper sing a little bit more. And normally Isley Brother albums it's Ron Isley singing and everybody else is doing their other stuff. So Chris Jasper starting to sing a little bit more. And I can imagine if you're a lead singer of a family group, you're probably thinking like, man, I do the singing. You go back over there and play them drums. You sit back over there and hold them cymbals. I'll wait for you to hit that cymbal. Like, I'll point to you and you hit the cymbal. Like, you get, like, people start having an idea of what their role is supposed to be, right? So whether it's them being the star or them just saying, hey, you're the keyboard guy. Let me know when I come back there and start trying to hit the keyboard. You play the keyboard. I'm going to do my singing. And so it's like really wild that, like, you're starting to hear this on these records. Now, take in mind, as a kid, I didn't hear most of these songs that are on these records. This was Big John putting me onto these records before they came back in print. So again, the importance of having a tour guide, like, he helped me appreciate the Isley Brothers so much more, because he took me through this era where there isn't hits. And so it's like, hey, look, man, this is where I struggle with some of the online dialogue. When you start talking about these great artists, these great groups, or even groups that had good runs and maybe they're not in their core run anymore, and somebody starts spouting off sales numbers or, you know, all that album didn't have no hits on it or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but you got to give these artists and these groups, what else could you want the Isley Brothers to do? Let's say it again. You Know You Make Me Want to Shout was 1959.
Wow, I know. That was, even if they never performed anything else again, they would always be talked about just on that, 1959.
Yeah, It's Your Thing is probably their biggest pop hit. That's 1969. That's before they added the three younger brothers. And then they add the three younger brothers. They remake their own song for that lady, turn it into a whole remade, funky, futuristic, or at least more modernized thing. Less doo-wop, more funk, more wild, up-tempo. They're out here with these little weird cowboy Elvis get-ups on all the album covers, and they're like ready to roll. And if you don't think they're ready to roll, you gotta be ready to roll to name your album The Heat Is On. You gotta be ready. You ain't gonna name your album Go For Your Guns. You can't name an album Go For Gun and you be like, I hope you guys like it. No, you name your album Go For Guns because you think you got it. Like, I'm ready. Like, whatever you think you can do as a band, we think we could do everything. We like everybody that we got. We wouldn't swap out nobody. And it's like, man, winner takes all, showdown. There's confidence in those titles. It's almost like multiple albums called like We're All That, guys. Like it's us. Like we're ready to, you can't stop this. But okay, now you talk about From Go All the Way. That's, that still got some hits. It's 1980. They start feeling like they got it. Grand Slam, like I said, doesn't get on base, but it sold eventually. Inside You, no hits. Real Deal, they're having identity issues. This isn't working. And so 82 and 83, they start working on what would eventually be their last 3+3 album. And that album is Between the Sheets. Well, I don't have to ask you, do you know the Isley Brothers song Between the Sheets? Because it's in the walls. It was in the walls everywhere we were at. And as kids, we were a little bit older, but not old enough for that to mean anything for us. But we all heard it. And then even if we didn't, 10 years later, Biggie comes out with Big Papa and he samples it. So even if you didn't know it, you'd have no choice but to know it. Because hip hop came and they love Between the Sheets. They love the album. They sampled a bunch of stuff off of it. And they love that song Between the Sheets. It's been sampled so many doggone times, it's not even funny. But the older brothers allegedly were having all these tax issues and all these money issues. And the younger brothers were like, hey, man, like, we're not having hits anymore. You guys aren't listening to us anymore. You guys spent the 70s riding off whatever we made. Y'all went in and performed it. And now y'all are acting like we didn't do what we did. So you start having all these internal strife, conflicts, issues. And so the younger group, so Marvin, Ernie, and Chris Jasper, these guys are basically the musicians in the background doing a lot of the arranging and a lot of the playing. And the brothers are doing most of the singing. And so that's kind of an issue if you take the engine out of a car, right? Because it's like, well, I ain't writing you no more songs, Ron. So I know you, Ron, and that's cool. But what you going to do if I don't write you a song? Well, yeah, the Isley Brothers kept going, but they had to take a break to kind of retool and figure out what they were going to do. And meanwhile, the younger brothers went on and became their own group, and they called themselves Isley, Jasper, Isley. Well, there's kind of two main songs that people know that group for. And one of them is Caravan of Love, which I assume you know.
Yes.
Of course, I'm your brother. I'm your brother. Don't you know? Man, that's Chris Jasper singing, right? Like, he sounds kind of like Ron, but there's no way you can sound like Ron. There's one Ron Isley, and even if you tried to do it, you couldn't do it. So he kind of didn't. So Chris Jasper had his own thing. And so, like, those videos are funny because they got on wild get-ups and their style is funny, but that makes sense because if you look at their Isley Brother album covers, if you look at Marvin, Ernie, and Chris on all those album covers, they're dressed wild on all those album covers, even compared to what everybody else has on, which is saying something. So the Isley, Jasper Isley, their hit their main hit that people knew that lasted forever is, Caravan of Love, but they also have a killer ballad called Insatiable Woman, which I run into the ground because it just sounds like an Isley Brothers song with a completely different person singing. But like they just killed it. Like that was probably the song where if Ron Isley heard that, he probably kicked over an ottoman. Like he probably called his brothers and was like, what the hell, y'all? How long did y'all have that? Like how in the world were we struggling to come up with hits and songs? Y'all leave less than a couple years later, you coming out with this? Like this is crazy.
We tried to tell you.
That's something. And it's like, we tried to tell you. Insatiable Woman has a video. And you need to put it in the show notes. You need to link it. We need to implore people to watch that Insatiable Woman video. It's a mid-'80s video where nobody knows what the hell to do, but they're trying to tell a story. And I can't describe this story and do justice to it. I just need you to know that you need to see this video because it is hilarious. The song is crazy jamming. But that video, wow. Somebody had to pay for that. They're in more than one place on that video. Somebody had a budget. I'm not saying it was Thriller, but they had a whole storyboard that ain't got nothing to do with the song. And it's amazing. So I love it.
It's in the daytime. They got the windows open.
Yes, they got the windows open. They're in multiple different places. Yes.
They're walking out. Somebody got a barrel of fire.
Yes.
They got the coolest frock coats I've seen in a while.
Man, there's a weightlifting part. Like, there's a part where Chris Jasper doesn't have a shirt on because he had to get the point across that he was in shape.
There's a fight scene.
Like, there is an elaborate fight scene. And Chris Jasper's, that's his real wife, is the love interest lady of the commercial, of the video. And she's also somehow got mythical powers. Yes. And she has the power to disappear. But we're ruining it. Like, even these explanations can't prepare you for this video because of the way it's all done together. And then there's random, just because during that time, people felt like, hey, if it's a video, it's got to show me singing the words to the song. So all this stuff is going on. And there's still times where you look at Chris Jasper's face and he's singing the words to the song that don't have a doggone thing to do with all of the insane stuff that's happening on this video. So I can't oversell it. I can only undersell it. People need to watch this video. And this is what they're doing after all of these hits and jams and years. So, like, I also can't overstate my love for the Isley Brothers, man. Like, listening to these albums, even the ones that quote unquote didn't hit, it's really an important lesson for your great groups. You need to hear all of it. You need to understand what it is. I think sometimes the failures help you appreciate the successes even more, because it's so difficult to figure out when they're going from era to era. How would they know what to do? Like, how you sound retro, or how do you say it now, a caricature of yourself? Like, how do you sound like yourself without sounding too much like your old self? Like, how do you have a signature sound when the eras keep on changing? And who do you involve? How do you involve them? And the Isley Brothers, over the years, they broke up, got back together. Chris Jasper never really made it back with them, which I think is a shame, because it's just beautiful musicians. I wish when they were together, I wish they could stay together forever. And this isn't the only case where it happened, but man, I wish they could have got back together and stayed back together. But starting in 85, they started losing more members of the group. So O'Kelly passed away in 85. I think somewhere in the 90s, early 2000s, Marvin passed away. Rudolph left to do the church thing. And Chris Jasper was kind of estranged from the group. So it just ended up turning into pretty quick. Like if you look at all their album covers from like the late 90s to now, it's just Ron Isley with Ernie Isley standing there holding a guitar. And Ron has normally got a cane or something goofy because he's Mr. Biggs now. And it's like, I can't imagine they knew that's how it would go. But it just kind of goes to show these guys were willing to take chances. These guys were willing to make the kind of the music that they felt like they needed for each of the individual times. So I think by the time it was the 90s and later on, I kind of view all that stuff as them taking victory laps, like kind of glad to be here. They're hearing the hip hop. They're hearing how much they're getting sampled. And they're just like, man, if these young dudes want us around, it's kind of like the same thing they were looking for in the early 80s. Like they wanted to almost be adopted by another group of younger artists to say, hey, man, y'all are young. Y'all can see it a way that we couldn't possibly see it. Tell me what I need to do. I'm still Ron Isley. We're still the Isley brothers. Like, what kind of music do I need to make? So funny enough, the Gap Band went through a similar trajectory, but they didn't have the same level of highs, but they had hits. And then they kind of had a period where maybe they didn't have a falling out amongst themselves, but they just weren't making hits. And I know they went through a bunch of personal stuff and drug stuff. And then the mid 90s came and it was the same thing. Hip hop and the amount of times all their stuff got sampled. Because I do have something for you on this, and I want to make sure we're clear because I don't think we talked about this before we recorded. Yearning for Your Love is the sample behind Nas's Life's a Bitch. You know that, right?
Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, my gosh. Now I can't unhear it. Wow.
So,
of course.
So like these two songs, I got you. That means hopefully we got a couple of our listeners too, right? Because it's like, man, these two songs are huge songs in the pantheon of early 80s R&B music. And again, this is the lesson that I'm trying to heavy-handedly teach here is like, man, you can't look at a chart and let it tell you what was jamming and what wasn't jamming and what was important and what wasn't important, because we have this vessel of hip hop. We have these excellent producers that maybe they uncle had the album and maybe our parents didn't. Or maybe when they went crate digging and they said, well, wait, I know Gap Band got a bunch of hits, man, but I don't know this one. And then they go play the album and then they find stuff to sample. Or they turn on the radio and the old school Unk radio of that time starts playing these records. And you're like in your 20s, maybe your parents weren't letting you listen to the music, and then you get to hear it and you kind of know who the Gap Band is and you kind of know who the Isley Brothers are, but you don't know what year, what thing came out, and you don't know when they were trying to sound like Prince, and you don't know when they was battling other bands with Earth, Wind, and Fire. Like, you can't put all that together till you've heard enough of the music and got enough context and seen enough documentaries around it. Like, you think about how many documentaries we've seen where you start hearing these crossover points for these bands. Like an example, the Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary where they talk about being on tour with P-Funk, and they have a show where they go on first and they're like, oh yeah, that was good. Yeah. And they come off the stage and then P-Funk comes on the stage and then they listen to P-Funk completely turn out that crowd. And then they realize like, we're good, but we're not this good.
We're never going to let somebody out funk us again.
We're never going to like these dudes are sitting up here 50 years later still talking about this, right? Like those types of things, like that's where you need that context. But yeah, man, not only is Yearning for Your Love somewhat obviously a Isley Brothers tribute record, but it's also the engine behind Life's a Bitch. Are you kidding me?
Keep yearning.
It's there. It's there. Go play those records and like the essence, like it's all there. Like these things are linked. these things are together, and like us living in our timeline, as the kids talk about alternate timelines and different timelines. But man, and I can understand falling for that because things aren't always great. But you know what, man? Give me this lifetime. Give me this timeline. Give me the timeline where I can go back and I can go to my phone and play Here We Go Again. And then I can play Yearning for Your Love right after that. And then because I'm a psycho, I can play Nas's Illmatic right after that. In the same day, in the same 30 minutes, I can do all of that. And because I've heard so much music and because I love music in a certain way, like all that stuff means something to me in a certain way. And it's like these are just 3 of hundreds of thousands, millions of songs that we've had come across our sphere of existence. And so it's like, man, like this is when I talk about keep on jamming, like this is what I'm talking about. That's the loaded message behind keep on jamming, man, because once you start connecting these dots, you can have a lot of fun with not even that much music. Because we are in an environment of abundance, man. If you have one streaming service, they can't wait to tell you how many million songs you got. But we just spent an hour talking about 2, and it leads into a third. And it's like, man, these are good times, man. And at no point did I tell you how many streams any of these songs have.
And what's that?
At no point did I tell you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, no point. No need.
No, at no point did I tell you where it landed on the R&B chart or the Billboard chart or none of that.
Correct, Amanda.
I just know that I had a dude that was 10 years older than me going on and on talking about 80s music, talking to me about the Isleys in the 80s. And I'm like, yeah, Between the Sheets, right? And he's like, no. Between the Sheets, yes. But you need to know about the stuff in between, like Showdown and all of that. And in Between the Sheets, they got like 5 albums. And I'm like, what? And I go look at the time and I'm like, I don't have any of these albums. I had, at that time, I thought I was an Isley Brothers guy. And I had like 5 Isley albums. And he was like, man, they got all these weird album names. So once you start knowing the albums, you know whether you know it or not. So he's like quizzing me and like, giving me the game. And he's like, man, you got to Go For Your Guns. And it's like, oh yeah, I know about that one. What about Showdown? I'm like, yeah, I know Showdown. And then he's like, well, Winner Takes All. And it's like, yeah, I didn't know that one until like a couple years ago. I just heard that. But then he said, man, what do you know about that Go All the Way? And I was like, what? No, I don't know Go All the Way. Well, okay, you know about Don't Say Goodnight, It's Time for Love, right? And it's like, oh yeah, okay, I know about that song. But it's like, do you know about Here We Go Again? And I'm like, no, what is that? He literally, Big John, he was a member of a record club. So he would get like every record from the R&B space and the dance music space and like the funk space. So that was like where he was at. And he would get other stuff too, but like that was where he was most at home at. And so, he had crates and crates and crates of records because he was basically like a DJ that didn't have a place to play all his records. And so he would work with some of the guys in the local radio stations and friended up with them because it's one of the only, those are the only people he could talk about music with because he had as many records as they had. And so being a member of a record club, you're like talking. And then, of course, over the years, different people sold their records, lost their records, gave their records away in a move, whatever, didn't want to carry the crates. But Big John kept all his records. So it's like in the early 2000s, like I said, like Go All the Way was out of print. Big John took the time to like transpose it, burn it onto the computer, which at the time was this crazy idea. He brings me Go All the Way, the whole album. That's how I heard it.
We got Fight the Power to Be.
Yeah, 75. What is that? 75, 76. Like Fight the Power is Heat Is On. So yeah. Now the Heat Is On, to kind of follow that example of what I was talking about, that's the Isley album where they did the thing. The first side is straight dance music and aggressive music, or it's more up tempo, let's say. It's Fight the Power is the beginning of the album. Then The Heat Is On, the title track. And then Hope You Feel Better is like their arena rock thing where Ron starts yelling and Ernie starts playing his guitar. And then the second side, For My Money, might be the best Isley Brothers side of any album. So check this out. For the Love of You. You know For the Love of You,
yes.
probably.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what that is.
Maybe. Well, I'm so sorry. Maybe even. Could that have been the first Isley Brothers song I ever heard? Like consciously knowing that? Okay, keep going.
I could believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Drifting on a Memory, ain't no place I'd rather be than with you. Yeah. Like, yeah. They killed it. That was one of them songs where it was as soon as he started singing, they were looking at each other like, we got one. Like, well, we just got to land the plane on this because we got this. The second song on the second side is this song called Sensuality, which is not as much of a hit, but again, it's a crazy ballad that once you know it, it's a perfect Isley record. And it's slow played to the max, like 7 minutes long. The chorus is every day I dream of holding you close to me. Every night I'm fine with touching your lips to mine. Like they were in it. Like we are on the second side. We've danced on the first side. The second side, we are here for 100% romancing. So we're talking For the Love of You, Sensuality, and then the closer of this album is Make Me Say It Again, Girl. Wow. I might be about to blow your mind again. So Make Me Say It Again, Girl. You know that one?
No, not by name.
So make me say it again, girl. You all I need. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the end of it is like, it's a vamp out. It's a long vamp out similar to Yearning for Your Love, right? Multiple years earlier. And it's like they go into a funk thing and it's keys and it's like, girl, you're all I need. Girl, you're all I need. And he just says, girl, you're all I need over and over and over again. And Ron is vamping and Ron is just losing it. And it's crazy. And there's no way you're going to tell me that the Gap Band didn't hear that and put some of that. Because Yearning for Your Love is an Isley Brother tribute song. 100%. It sounds the most like Here We Go Again, but it's an overall Isley tribute record. When you listen to Make Me Say It Again, Girl, make sure you remember that that is the engine behind Bone Thugs' Crossroads.
Ah.
Do do doom 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 doo doo doom. It's Crossroads. When you hear it, you're like, oh my God, it's Crossroads. So like, this is how big of a deal the Isley Brothers are, the hip hop man.
Yeah, they're pretty. They're setting the tone for the 1990s. You know, we got Ice Cube.
Of course, Footsteps in the Dark. Yeah.
So it's wild how, because we've talked about this a couple of times with some people. It's wild how the 80s has been like this dead zone for folks, where it's like, hey, we got these smash hits in the 50s. Hey, we're smashing hits in the 60s. No big deal. We're reigning supreme in the 70s. And then in the 80s, it's just, there's something happening where it's like, okay, well, how do we function now?
Right. And I think in our mind, and I had this conversation with one of my buddies from college. It's like, hey, man, the 80s can really disarm you because you have that additional media piece. Mm-hmm. Right. Because you got in the 70s, it's like, hey, you got the albums. That's kind of it. Like either you're jamming the albums or you're not. The hit songs are the hit songs. And if your parents had the album, you might have heard the album by accident. And based on that, those songs are like, they mean something to you. When you get to the 80s, it's just kind of about the hits, but also it gets to be about the songs that had videos. And what are we saying, right? Like, we're thinking to ourselves, the Isley Brothers have all these songs in the early 80s. We talked about 4 or 5 albums before their 3+3 group broke up. And I can't remember one video from any of those albums because it's early 80s, whereas like making a video was a decision. So something else that's weird, if you think about early 80s Stevie Wonder, which is like Hotter Than July, Musicarium. He made the Woman in Red soundtrack. Like, he had hits, he had jams, but a lot of that stuff doesn't have videos. And even when it does, they're like decidedly absurdly weird videos because they didn't want to put the budget on the storyboard. So it's just kind of Stevie Wonder standing in a room and people dancing around him. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess there's only so much you could do. But it's like, again, early 80s, late 70s, even if you were going to make a video, the idea was like, I don't know what to do. So either I'm going to pretend I'm in concert and act like I'm having the best concert I ever had in my life while I sing this song, or I'm going to try to tell a story. And then before you know it, I got my wife has got to be a ninja woman while I call her Insatiable Woman, My Body's Yours. And it's like, you don't, like, there's a lot of places to go and you just don't know what to do. But you know you don't got enough money and enough patience to do Thriller. So you're not doing Thriller. You're not weird enough and cool enough to do Purple Rain or When Doves Cry or any of that. So you're not doing that either. So if you're a group that's aging out, that you've been around, like what the Isley Brothers tried to do is just say, dude, it's us. You know it's us. Like, we just gonna give you these jams, and that should be enough. But it kind of just didn't go that way. And then, you know, once they broke up and started getting back together and doing different configurations, they kind of came back up after a while. But it's like, in my mind, you know, you think about these artists and how quickly we know people are really fickle now. But even back then, it's like, hey, man, they made The Heat Is On in 75. And I'm just giving you a rundown of, like, it got to 81 and the Isley Brothers were kind of lost. So, like, The Heat Is On, that second side is like, that's a very supreme, it's 3 songs, man. These are 3 of the best songs that any R&B group has ever made, including them. And they're awesome. With a multi-decade career, they put that out. People had that album. It sold like hotcakes. And again, 2 of those 3 songs on that second side are like, if you have a slow jams radio station, you better play Make Me Say It Again, girl, at some point. You better play For the Love of You at some point. You better. Because if not, are you even serious about this? Because you probably aren't. Or you're going to try to be cool and play Sensuality because everybody didn't know that one. Like, but that's how, like, when you get that much of a killer side right, like back then, like, you think about what we're like, put people back in that again, like, somebody's got to go physically turn over this record, or they got to go back and put the needle back at the beginning. Could you imagine how many times people probably ran back that side over and over and over again? Like, that probably happened a lot.
Loads.
So, you know, these are just, you know, some of the things to talk about with these groups, these artists, all coming out of this song. Here We Go Again, which, you know, sounds like a hell of a lead in to Yearning for Your Love. But the idea here was to really give a lot of context around how we got here. Because it's like, this is 1980. This is the Isleys' like 18th album. And it's the Gap Band's 5th album. And it's like Gap Band was kind of on their way up and the Isley Brothers didn't know it, but they were kind of on their way to breaking up and going down. But now when you talk about these groups and when you look at it from a hip hop standpoint, like they're like havens of samples and they're just viewed all the same as barbecue unk music. But it's like, man, these groups were in very different places in 1980, and they still made 2 songs that sound a hell of a lot alike that I'm sitting here talking about in great detail 45 years later.
Like it was nothing. Like, dude, these are, I mean, and then we got Ron Isley being Mr. Big and talk about videos. All in the video. Still in the show. Scene stealing. Yeah.
Scene stealing, doing some low level acting.
Yes.
Getting mad. I mean, yeah, got his little entourage around, like acting a complete fool, man.
You know what? You needed a decade to go by because, you wouldn't do that in the 80s because, you're not being a caricature of yourself. Now you're older and you're being appreciated. So you're like, okay, yeah, I'll be Unc. And okay, if this is what they want to do, they're being nostalgic about this time period where we were doing this and that, sure. And you get Mr. Big.
Yeah, you get Mr. Big, and you also get the Ernie Isley, I didn't know we needed this till we got it, guitar solos. Because, all that stuff had unnecessary, unrequested, but also super jamming guitar solos, which, a lot of times in R&B music and black music in general, like guitars outside of bass guitars just fall completely out of the game. And, a group like the Isley Brothers are, in a lot of ways, really rebellious for being able to work that into their thing. So it's like they're like the weirdest group that doesn't get treated like a weird group, because their sound is like its own thing, so much so that when somebody else does what they're doing, it's almost obvious. Correct. Now, with 2026 ears.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. Yearning for your love. Keep running.
We're going to put this in the show notes. Guys, we're going to put Life's a Bitch by Nas in the show notes. Wow. This was a
Insatiable
journey.
Woman.
Yeah,
you
the video.
Put Insatiable Woman
yes, the video.
Please.
Yes.
My body's yours.
Yeah, so go back and listen to this. Watch that video. I'm going to watch the video because I was just looking at the clips. Yeah. It was, like you said, there was weightlifting. There was all kind of things going on. People around a barrel of fire, keeping warm. Like they just walked out the bad Beat It video. It's a lot going on. Hey, man. So how can the lovely listeners reach us, Arthur?
I would love to hear what anybody thinks about this theory, my little tinfoil theory that Gap Band bit off the Isley Brothers on purpose. I would love to hear some story of the Isley Brothers actually bit off the Gap Band, but because they had the resources, their album came out first. I would love to hear some sort of nuanced story about this. But yeah, ontherecordjams@gmail.com. Anywhere where our episodes is posted, if there's a comment field, please comment. Please state your case if some kind of way Charlie Wilson's your uncle or something. I know they call him Uncle Charlie, but that don't mean he's really your uncle. Don't come in there lying. Give me the story. Let me know. We're on Facebook, On The Record. We're on OTRJ on Blue Sky. We're on The Record Jams on the X, if you still do that. We're around, but please keep that conversation going. Please talk to us about the Isley Brothers and the Gap Band, and please go watch Insatiable Woman, My Body's Yours, and enjoy the amazing tomfoolery that is a mid-80s video when people don't know what to do.
Right into us. I want to hear your Gap Band Isley Brothers stories. So until next time, keep your lamplight trimmed and burning.
And please, I mean it, keep on jamming.